Regressive behavior. On our journey toward maturity, we must be on guard against our tendency to regress to old patterns of behavior. Here's Gene to explain.
This is outlined very clearly regarding Moses. Look at Exodus 6:10-13. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Go and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the Israelites go from this land." This is now after he's been rejected by Pharaoh and by the people. But Moses said in the Lord's presence, he's being honest with God. That's the thing I see growth in Moses' life here. He's honest with God. "If the Israelites will not listen to me, then how will Pharaoh listen to me, since I am such a poor speaker?" Regression. See, he's going back to 40 years there at the burning bush when his final excuse was, "I can't speak." And that's when God said, "Who made your mouth?" And furthermore, there was a time in your life when you were mighty in words and deeds. And I can restore that confidence, Moses. So he regressed. And then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, gave them commands concerning both the Israelites and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the Israelites out of the land of Egypt. He reiterates, God understands the struggle, and basically what happens? Again, regression. On the day the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, he said to him, "I am the Lord. Tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, everything I'm telling you." But Moses replied in the Lord's presence once again, "Since I am such a poor speaker, how will Pharaoh listen to me?" And so you can see the regression back to his weakness, his area of vulnerability. And so it shouldn't surprise us that on our journey towards maturity, we must be on guard against our own tendency to regress to old patterns of behavior. That just happens. And God knows about that. And we have a wonderful statement in Hebrews 12, the author of Hebrews. And he uses an athletic metaphor when he says, "Therefore, since we also have such a large crowd of witnesses surrounding us." And the whole scene here is a stadium. Now, my wife and I just had the privilege of being in Turkey, Asia Minor, and we saw a stadium. It was a circular stadium. I mentioned this just a week ago. It would seat about 25,000 people. That's a huge stadium. It's been unearthed. You can actually sit on these rocks, and you can see this stadium. And that particular stadium is very close to one of the cities where one of the churches of Asia that's mentioned in the book of Revelation. And so the author of Hebrews may have been thinking of this very stadium. And people that are out, competing in the midst of that stadium. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. "Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us, and run with endurance the race that lies before us." Now, if you go back into Hebrews chapter 11, you will see the witnesses from the Old Testament. Beginning with basically with Abel, and it goes all the way through and includes Abraham and Moses, who's one of the witnesses. And we're able to look in on his life and to see how he walked through all of this and came out the other side as a man who was obedient to the Lord, even though he failed along the way. And so there's a whole cloud of witnesses. But in the midst of all of these witnesses, he says, keep your eyes on Jesus. Even witnesses, they're important, they encourage you, but the one who will never fail you is Jesus Christ. So there's the metaphor and the application. Keep your eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lay before him endured a cross, despised the shame, has sat down at the right hand of God's throne. So basically, what we see here is a very, very important principle that we looked at when we looked at the book of Hebrews. It's principle 18 in Hebrews. Though God has ordained that we be encouraged by heroes of faith, other people We should always focus our thoughts first and foremost on the Lord Jesus Christ. And that's one of the things that Moses is learning, is though he didn't understand Jesus Christ as we do, he was to keep his eyes on God, who is revealing himself to Moses. Keep your eyes on me, Moses, not on those around you, in order to be successful and not to regress. You'll be tempted, but when you're tempted, just lay aside all those weights, the sin that so easily causes you to regress, and keep moving forward. The reflection response question, why is it easy? I smile at this because it is easy. Why is it easy to regress to old patterns of behavior that inhibit us from doing God's will and growing in our Christian lives? Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, except to say that emotional wounds can be very deep. And even though they happened 40 years ago, or 50 years ago, for some of us, 60 years ago, or 70 years ago, they're deep. And usually, if it's a deep wound, there's a scab. It may look like it's healed over, and it is, but it's tender. And it's so easy for that tenderness to be penetrated by the same kind of experience. And we need to be aware of that. And it takes time to heal. To be honest with you, I think that through deep wounds like this, we're always vulnerable. Because we're still in this old body with these emotions. And even though God brings healing in our lives, it takes time to heal and to deal with those wounds. And see, God knows this about Moses. So he is equipping him for what actually lay ahead in terms of this great challenge.